And we're live. How's everyone doing? My name is Joey. I'm the owner at HBYOB. It's been a long time. With me today, I have Easy Kill. How are you doing, Easy?
I'm doing fine. It's been a while since we talked about beer. I'm pretty excited.
I know. I'm out of retirement. I'm sitting straddling a box right now because life happened and store got a little crazy at the very end of the day. So we are working this out as we go. Today's topic is about a new product that was brought aware to me from Dan at Carolina Brewing. He said, "You ever heard of these MaltGems?" And I was like, "I have no clue what you're talking about." Very next day, one of my representatives that calls me from one of the places I purchased from, we were talking about a bunch of different products. We got some cool wine kits coming in, the LE20. We can get into those on another podcast, but we basically was talking a bunch of stuff. And I go, I heard the other day about someone talking about these MaltGems. What's the deal with these MaltGems?
I'm curious now. I'm curious.
So before we get into that, I had to grab me a quick beer.
Me too.
What are you drinking? Let's go there first.
I have a McGuire's Draft Stout. So that's all I can tell you. I've never. This is the first one I've ever had, and now I guess I don't think it matters how or why I bought it. Aldi's of all places now carries a little line of craft beers, which I was kind of surprised, and this happened to be there. They had this
beer, man.
Huh? No, they had this and Guinness side by side. The Guinness was like $10.99, and this was $6.99 for 6 bottles of stout. I thought, how can you go wrong trying a stout for $6.99?
So I don't know how much my beer was in value, but I just snagged one out of the refrigerator because we just got them in. They are 50 West Xmas Cookie. It's I'm assuming a winter beer. Not bad. Not usually a winter beer fan, but it's not bad.
Who's the brewer?
50 West out of,
okay.
I think Indiana or Ohio. I forget.
But if you told me this was Guinness, I would believed you. This is brewed in Milwaukee. Doesn't say the actual brewer, but it's not a bad stout for what I paid. I'll live with it. All right, let's get into this gem.
I was going to say, we'll get straight to it because I've been running in circles. I used the product we were going to talk about today. I'm still cleaning it out, so I'm like a hot mess because I've been trying to clean this for like 2 hours now. But basically, MaltGems. What are a MaltGem? I'm going to screen share here if I can figure out how to do this. Okay.
I'm going to watch it, but while you're doing that, let everybody know we're live on Facebook or YouTube, and if people want to post questions, if it's something to do with what we're talking about, we'll get to that.
So MaltGems, basically, I'll give you the layman's terms, but first we'll read. Excuse me, I'm not the greatest reader, but MaltGems is crafted by removing the majority of the husk, fine grit, and flour from our milling synergy select Pilsen malt. What remains is the heart of the malt that can be lathered like a traditional brewer's grind to deliver exceptional performance. This innovative product reveals true malt flavors without bitter, astringent qualities present with our other malts, which is only possible through the elimination of the husk-based polyphenols. So basically, let me get rid of my screen share. In layman's terms, basically what's happened is if you're familiar with like a chocolate malt, a black patent malt, roasted barley, they make like what's called carafa malts, and carafa malts are a lot like the other malts we just mentioned, except they remove the husk. So what does the husk do? They say if it can put tannins into the beer, which is an undesirable flavor, unlike wine where you want tannins, but beer you don't want the tannins. So it gives you a smoother malt profile. I believe personally, through brewing over the years, if you mash your grains properly and you do everything right, I'm not sure that husk really matters. They say that unless you bring basically the grain to a boil, that you're really not going to release very many tannins into the brew.
You're not getting it hot enough for it to release.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not saying it's not present. I will admit when I've used Carafa malt, and we do have those here in the store, it does add to a little bit smoother malt profile. But when I'm making a stout or a porter, I actually kind of like it. So I'm not a Carafa malt user myself because I like somewhat of the the astringency from it. But I don't even think I use the right word for the tannins from it. So basically, this is a base malt produced by Briess, which is we carry our 2-row and our pale ale malt. We carry Briess here in the store. This is their Pilsen malt, except 80%, if I remember correctly, 80% of the husk has been removed. So when I was talking to my sales rep and I was like, why? And my first concern was our mashes are going to get stuck. One of the big part of a crush to a brewery or even a home brewer is the crush. If you crush it too fine, your system will get clogged. If you crush it too coarse, you're not going to get the sugars out of it.
Right. Not enough release.
Correct. So, it's kind of that fine line. Brew in the bag people will ask me to double crush your grains from time to time. No one's ever asked me to crush it coarser. But anyway, my point is this malt, since it's got the husk removed, we need that as a natural filter bed. So at first I was kind of pessimistic of like, this isn't going to work out too well. But I was said through the manufacturing process, the way it comes in, it's actually already crushed. So you don't have to worry about doing that yourself. And even if not, we'll crush any grain here in the store free of charge. But so for me, it's like, well, okay, so now we're producing less flour because it's the gem. That's kind of where the term malt gem comes from. You're not going to get as much flour produced from the crushing process.
Right. It's the heart. It's the important part.
Yeah. So immediately my head went to, well, my brew in a bag people will really like this because you're not getting the flour, which can scorch to the bottom of your pot, can clog your brew system. But to be honest, I'm like, there's no way this is going to go through a regular traditional, lauter tun. It's just going to get, all the pumps are going to get clogged, or, your false bottom's going to get clogged. I was pretty not thinking it was going to work. And I didn't even think, for me personally, I was concerned about the tannins because I've never really had that with beers of mine. So immediately I'm like, well, my brew in the bag people might enjoy this. And, for me to, before I sell anything, I'm like, I'm going to order a bag and let's give it a shot. So I went ahead and ordered a bag, got it. Today I was like, I'm going to use it. I want to do a podcast about it. I can see an application for this. My first thought was, well, here's the first, I'll give you the 2 cons I have with it. The first con is it's more expensive than your traditional, base malt. But then when you think about it, there's no husk. Well, 80% of the husk has been removed. So some of your, I think of it like beef jerky. If you made beef jerky, you got a lot of water weight in there that's going to be dehydrated out. Right. So it's more concentrated in flavor. It's why beef jerky is more expensive.
Right. If you're buying 1 pound, you're getting truly 1 pound of malt, not
Correct.
3/4 of a pound and then a quarter of a pound of flour.
Exactly. Well, no, actually, you're not getting it. The idea would be you're getting 3/4 of a pound of, if you bought the other way, you're going to get 3/4 a pound of malt, and then you're going to have the husk. That's the other 25%, the water, the where I'm trying to use the water weight. So I'm like, well, if you use less of it, then if it's a little bit more expensive, no big deal. So I got it today. I was all anxious. I cut open the bag and looked at it and was like, fail. This looks like malt. I mean,
it just looks like any normal grain at this point, or something that was crushed.
So I'm gonna screen share again. I took a couple pictures of today's brew day. I don't know how to do this. Are we there? Are we there yet? All right. So that's what the grain looked like, and as you can see, can you see that, Mark?
Yeah,
the viewers out there.
I
mean, it looks kind of like grain.
Right.
So, here you can see this is called the endosperm. That's basically when we're mashing our grains. That's what we're after. That white stuff there, those are the goodies. That's where our starches are going to convert to sugars. So I looked at it and I'm like, all right, whatever. This is going to be a bust. Then I mashed with it, and let's see here. And you can see there. So here was the very first thing I experienced was when I poured it. So out of the gate, I was a pessimist. I was like, this is going to suck. This is no different than anything we've ever used before. When I was weighing it out, flour was all in the air. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Right.
This is just
that would be the part we were going to miss.
Yeah. Okay. I'm like, oh, great. I don't have to breathe in a bunch of grain dust. Perfect. This will be an awesome product. Well, no, that didn't. Full disclosure of all things, it's worse now. The more flour was in the air because it wasn't contained within the mill. When it's in the mill, we have like a, there's like a box that the mill stays in. So the dust, for the most part, stays in there. This was all in the air because I'm scooping it out and putting it in there. So right out of the gate, I'm like, you know what? We're not having a podcast tonight. This stuff's shit. I'm done with it. Then I dough'd it in. And for those of you who don't know what doughing in is, that's basically a fancy term of stir the shit in. I poured the entire, so I made a smash beer.
Now, did you use recipe-wise? Let me stop you here, because recipe-wise, did you weigh it out the same as you would any other malt? Meaning, if you were going to use 1 or 2 pounds, is that what you weighed out, or did you compensate?
So I didn't make any tweaks yet.
Okay.
I brewed a standard smash beer recipe. And for those of you that don't know, a smash beer stands for single malt and single hop. I think I got that right. So basically, I just said, I'm going to use 10 pounds of this. I put it into my calculator. I took mosaic hops and just calculated a couple different hop additions to 35 IBUs. That way I can test out the malt, see how it works. I did it for 72% mash efficiency. Basically the same way I would kind of dial in any recipe based on, I used a grain father to brew it up. I usually get around 72% mash efficiency. So that's basically where I started from. Like I said, I poured it into the bucket. There was no need to mill it because it's already milled, which was one of my concerns was of it getting stale for not being used in a timely manner, which if you, like I said, if you get a chance, go to Briess's website, or even if you go to our website, I actually added the recipe that I brewed today for sale. There's just a handful of those available on the website. And I also got just like the base grain. If you want to try it yourself, you can purchase that there too. But my point is there's a description in the web, in our webpage. It talks about a lot of these bullet points, but, so what I did was I went 10 pounds. So at this point, I'm like, this is silly. This stuff sucks. I'm already right. Alarms are going off of,
right. You're disappointed because right. Your first hope was no dust. Yeah. That was your first hope, and that went right out the window. My bubble was burst right out of the gate.
Yep. So until I poured it into the mash, and I'm telling you, when I poured that, I don't know what they did. But when I poured that malt into my mash water, no dough balls, it wasn't like thick. I did nothing different from normal. And I'm telling you, within like not even 30 seconds, that grain dissolved, or not even dissolved, but just incorporated like butter. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I was shocked.
So was the flour, obviously, now I'm going to go back to, if we weren't using this, we were using regular malt. How much of the flour there or dust is because of the husk, where in this case it was dust, but it was dust from the malt itself?
Yeah, I mean, just a byproduct, that white stuff you see in there, when anytime you crack it up, it produces flour. Sure. I mean, to some degree. So like I said, I at this point, like, I didn't think they did anything other than they basically made like a carafa stock, a dehusked base malt. That's all I thought that they did. Okay. I didn't think there was any gem to it. Because like I said, it wasn't acting like if I crushed a Pilsen malt and then took a scoop and started scooping it into my weigh bucket. I mean, I didn't see any, visually looking at it and the way the dust was coming up, I didn't see anything different personally. Like I said, everybody's results may vary, but I didn't see anything different. So I mashed in, and immediately I was like, oh man, there's something to this. Like, this stuff is like stirring in like nice, like butter. Like I'm digging. Very quickly the wheels started going. You know what? This ain't bad. I'm really digging this. Turned on my recirculation on the grain father, and as soon as the recirculation starts, almost initially, always if anyone's used like a grain father system, you'll notice we usually put like, it's a sink straining screen, but if you put it on top of there, it will it'll keep the husks that go through the pump from getting back down through the through the system. Usually there's a center post, and usually, which is an overflow in case the wort builds up too far, it goes down the center. It keeps your pump from running dry is essentially what it does. It never came anywhere close to recirculating. I thought it was going to get stuck. I honestly did. I'm like, this looks just like a really finely grained ground malt that's dehusked. I'm like, even in a brew in a bag style system, which is what Greenfather's doing, I'm like, with the recirculation, this is just going to clog this system in the next week. It did not. I mean, it was better than a coarsely ground malt. I mean, so now, like, really the wheels are turning. Like, I'm immediately like, you know what? I'm going to start converting all my recipes. What am I brewing next? I think that's the fun part of homebrewers is we're always thinking about our next beer while we're brewing our current beer. Mash was done. Lifted the mash basket. That I would say it did drain from the mash basket a little bit quicker than like a traditional grain. I sparged it and went on with my brew day. At that point, you know, it was beer. I mean, at that point, it was no different. It was still technically wort, but it was no different than any other brew day, whether you do extract beer. It didn't really matter as far as that goes. So like I told you, I calculated my recipe for 72% mash efficiency. I get done. My estimated starting gravity on 10 pounds of base malt was 1.042, I think is what it calculated. I hit 0.53.
Oh,
I went 10 points above. Over 72. I calculated it was 86% mash efficiency.
At 10 pounds.
At 10 pounds. Now, granted, it was for a 5-gallon batch, but I do my volumes for 5.6 gallons because by the time the Grainfather notoriously leaves about a quarter gallon in the system, you know, just it's tough. It doesn't go through the pump. And then trub and yeast and all that. I always do my recipes for 5.6 gallons because, like I said, by the time you get to a keg, you end up with 5 gallons, basically, is the reason why I do it that way. So that being said, like I said, I went from an estimated, I've never gotten, to be honest, 72% is about where my system runs. I've never really gotten much more above it. For years, I got below it, and I've never been
even a percent or two higher would be rare. And this time it's 10.
Yeah, I mean, to get a full 10 points, which is roughly a 1% jump. So from like an estimated 4.6, we got closer to like 5.6. So to jump a full thing immediately, that's what I was like. Now price almost doesn't matter because you can dial your recipes back by about 20%. So, I mean, as far as like, you know, cost goes, you're really looking at the same money. Even though like I said, the malt, like our base grains are $1.50 a pound versus these are like $1.79 a pound. So, I mean, there is a price difference there. But like I said, I got to the final gravity and I used I'm going to screen share one last time.
So would you recommend, so I guess you could go either way. You could either cut the recipe, you know, use less, knowing it's going to go that high, or obviously at this point, you're going to have do you assume now you're going to have a flavor change because of the 10%?
Well, yeah, or it's not 10%, it's 10 points, 10 gravity
10 points. Right. I'm sorry.
But so like right here is so that was the last thing I made note of. This is my 5-gallon mark here. That's my tilt hydrometer. But there's a 5-gallon mark. It looks like really weird there because I used a Warflock tablet. It looks like crystal clear already now, but you know, I ended up even getting, I think there was less grain absorption. There was less grain how do I get out of here? There was less grain absorption because there's no husk. The husk soaks up a lot of, back to that water weight. The husk sucks up a bunch of water. So, like I said, I was shocked that I hit that I was shocked I hit that kind of efficiency. I calculated it was 86%. If you would tell me your brew system gets 86% mash efficiency, I just look at you and say you're full of it. Like that's not
right. You're not getting
that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I got it with this. I mean, like I said, I took all the numbers. I took a refractometer reading and a hydrometer reading, and my tilt's floating in there right now. Tilt does usually go a few points different than my starting gravity. But anyway, I got to the end of it. So far, the two cons, I'll address the other concern in just a little bit, but the two cons for me was price, which, like I said, if we really think about it, not that big of a deal because we're getting more sugars per pound essentially.
Right.
So then immediately I was already thinking like, you know who this is perfect for? Not only, Briess brew in a bag style brewers, this is also fantastic for high gravity beers, because anyone who's brewed all grain before knows the higher the ABV of the beer, the harder it is to extract the sugars out of the grain. It's just the simple facts of life. So I'm already thinking to myself, like, all right, this stirred in so well. I got such good mash efficiency out of it. I've got a big imperial stout. I'm like, that's the next beer I'm going to do this with. Because if I can pull those sugars out to that degree, like at some point my mash efficiency is going to go down. At 10 pounds, that's not very much grain. So I should have got good mash efficiency, even if I used traditional Pilsen malt. So the stale part, like I said, if you read the description, they go on about how basically the way they do the malt, it's not that big of a concern. The fact that it's already pre-ground, you don't have to worry about getting stale like traditional malt. And then the other thing I was concerned about was price. We talked about that. And then so the very last thing is, anyone who's used a brew in a bag style system will agree that usually your burner, there's a pretty fair amount of scorching, because unfortunately some of that
it all goes to the bottom.
Not all of it, because there's a screen there, but some gets through the holes, and
the real fine stuff.
Even though we've got it's recirculating. I mean, you still get a lot of stuff in there, and notoriously, I mean, barkeeper's friend or PBW is your friend, because you just gotta get that scorch off the bottom. I mean, it just happens. So that was my final thing was, how bad's my burner look to clean up? And I'm not even joking. You could have just took paper towels and just wiped it clean.
Huh.
I mean, I went through a wave of pessimistic to now I'm already like, these are the things that make me like excited back about brewing, of like, what are ways we can push the envelope of brewing? What are new practices we can use? Like I said, I'm giving you my honest initial thoughts. I haven't drank the beer yet because I brewed it today. In theory, if this beer is terrible, I can't see any reason why, as far as flavor goes, it would change, other than maybe for the better. Like I said, if you're doing like a stout, it's possible you do want some of those, you do want the husks to give you some of that flavor. But so far, like I said, if you're doing like a Pilsner or a lager, or anything that's, light and refreshing, like a blonde ale, cream ale, anything of that, like, I honestly highly so far would recommend this malt. I think I think I don't want to use the word game changer, but I think this isn't going to go away. This isn't a malt that will come and go like some other things have in the past. I have a feeling this will be here for the long run.
Well, just real quick, because Brian just logged in. We've been talking here for a little bit. Go back to what the product is again.
So the product that we're talking about is called MaltGems. It's made by Briess. It's basically a base grain that has the husk removed, similar to like a Carafa malt. And we were discussing the pros, the cons, and just kind of first impressions of the malt. And so far, I'm giving it 2 thumbs up. Honestly,
2 thumbs up. Right.
I would seriously. There's a lot of products that I could go with or without. I know fermenting under pressure is one of those where I do it a lot now. I'm not sure it's not something you have to do.
Well, there's been plenty of this is going to change brewing forever, and then 6 months later you can't find it anymore, or it's not even out there. And you said a price difference, and then later you said you said one of the negatives was the price, but then when you told me the price, to me it wasn't that different. Roughly $1.58 to $1.70 something.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, it's not significant, but you need to use less of it. So you kind of got to put your,
that's my point.
Could
it, if you do the real math after you brew a few, could it actually end up being cheaper?
I mean, in theory, like I said, when people who brew tend to cling to different things with brewing. Some use them. Like I said, some people are super into yeast. Some people are super into water chemistry. Some are super into mass efficiency. With some are just recipe creation. Some people like brewing their beer, building their beer system. Everybody kind of has their own path in the brewing hobby that they like to go down. Mash efficiency is not one, or costs for. To me, I want to brew a good beer, and it doesn't matter if I can save a few pennies. I'm not going to do it because I want to brew good beer. So for me, it's like that's my big thing though. Like, however, I'm also the type of person where, if I can get the same product, but if it's cheaper, what,
All
but
right,
also,
I'm just saying, I just know your first negative was the price. But if,
well, no, I mean, because that was basically when I talked to my sales rep and everybody, that was kind of that was their con, was it? You have to explain to your customer why it's more expensive.
Right.
And are they getting value for that? Like I said, because with it, it's like, is this Pilsen malt? Because their thing is it's going to taste better. I'm still not convinced it's going to taste better because I don't really buy into the tannins, if you're brewing properly, are that big of a deal.
Okay, but that's the tannins. I guess I'm thinking though, if you use the same amount and you're getting more malt extract, there's got to be a flavor change.
Yeah. I mean that's the thing. Like, so that's where I'm getting to, is like in my recipe, if I use traditional Pilsen malt, I would have used 10 pounds, but this I probably would have only used 8. So for the 20 cents, 30 cents more a pound, there's 20 cents more a pound, 30 cents more a pound. I can't do math for the 30 cents more a pound. But if you're using 20% less,
right,
well, it's still technically cheaper.
Right.
So, I mean, but like I said, you're kind of splitting hairs with it. I do know I'm going to have to tweak my recipes. So,
sure,
that's another thing is, no different with alpha acids and hops, you have to tweak recipes. And it sounds like with this malt, you're going to have to dial it down.
No,
so
right.
Like I said, I don't think, so the first thing, like I said, to explain it to potential customers would be is in theory, don't buy as much as what your recipe's calling for, because you're going to get better mash efficiency out of it. And everybody's system's different. I've heard people getting the 50s in mash efficiency. I've heard people getting the high 80s, and most people usually land in the 65.
And this is
range.
Pre-crushed already, right? Meaning they don't have to, you don't have to crush it for them or anything. They can just come in and buy. You can just come in and buy 5 or 10 pounds or 8 pounds or whatever. And there's no crushing involved or anything.
So my recommendation so far would be to take your recipe. Say you want to come in the store. I like I said, you have to say something to me if you come in the store, buy it online, because like I said, it's not something I have out for sale yet for, just anyone walking in, only because I truly like to try everything beginning to end before I sell it. I don't want to pass off something that's terrible. And like I said, I still haven't drank the beer yet. And I only bought a 50-pound bag just to try it out. But I would say to change your recipe, I would instead of increasing your efficiency, I would just dial back on the base malt, but leave all your specialties alone. Still keep those at the regiments that you would get, because it's going to be weird in a like brewing software, because you're technically getting better mash efficiency, but you're really not, if that makes any sense. You're getting it from one particular grain.
Right.
So everything else. So say your recipe called for 10 pounds of 2-row or Pilsen, called for 10 pounds of Pilsen malt and a pound of, caramel 60. I would go to like 8 pounds of this MaltGems malt, but I wouldn't go to like 0.75 pounds.
Right. Everything else stays
I would leave everything else the same, because what's going to happen is if you're extracting more sugars, you're going to throw off your bittering. The beer is going to end up sweeter. If not, I mean, you could leave it alone. Just know you're going to get a beer that's going to be higher in alcohol.
Right. Hey,
but then your hop profile.
People like to experiment. I mean, you can experiment and do whatever you want. That's but that's
like
the fun part of home brewing.
If you wanted to do this as like a trial run, what I'm saying is I would dial back on your recipe by about 20% in the base grain, leave everything alone. That way you could try to compare it closer to apples of what you
normally brewed in the past.
And like I said, I'm not an expert in this. I truly heard about this Sunday, ordered it Monday, and got it here yesterday, brewed with it today. And I didn't even honestly do much homework with it, because like I said, I wanted to use it. And if I thought it was in the gimmicky department, I probably just would have moved on and I would have been done. Like I said, I almost texted you earlier to say, podcast's off. This is just a gimmick. But honestly, without taking too much more of y'all's time, I 100% think y'all should give this a try. I'm going to get multiple. I'm going to get a lot more of it in here in the store. And like I said, it's just another one of those things.
And I know you blew by the easy cleanup. I'm sorry. We've talked in the past. I'm all about that. If I can make the exact same beer and save 20% cleanup time, I'm all about that. I mean, and I'm willing to pay more to not have to clean up as much. So, definitely that's another benefit.
That's it. That's the only downfall to being a home brewer is you don't typically get a brewing assistant like a lot of breweries do, and the brewing assistant's doing a lot of the cleaning. But yeah, like I said,
you don't sell the assistants? We can't.
I'm full.
We can't come in and buy an assistant.
I'm full of advice, but not of backbreaking cleaning. Unfortunately, that part I don't do, or I do on my own system. But like I said, I give it 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. Hopefully, in 2 weeks, this beer will be ready. So
we'll do another podcast.
We'll do another one. We'll just sample it. We can talk about it more. Like I said, it's available on the website. If you just go to the home page, scroll down to, I think it's not featured items. I think it's new items. They're back to back. You can do my exact recipe if you want to. I would love it. So I did it in a Grainfather system. I would love it if someone has a different brewing system to give it a try. So I only put four kits available on the website of the same recipe I've got. Like I said, that was basically what I had left. And if you wanted to brew it, and I would love it if people wanted to pick it up. That way they could brew the system and maybe pass some beers back and forth. That way we can kind of see if you have any trouble, with your system of it getting stuck or anything. But so far, so good. I honestly, I thought Briess was full of it when they said that you didn't have to add rice hulls or anything to your system. I thought there was no way it was going to work. I'm very optimistic now. So just wanted to give you guys a shout out. I did not disappear. We are still alive and well. Hope all of you guys are alive and well. Anytime you want to stop in the store, website's always going. Pick up orders. You can still come in the store and shop anytime. If you want to brew the kit yourself, visit us on the website or come see me tomorrow or anytime you're free. If anyone's got any questions there in the chat, feel free to. Mark, you got anything to add before we?
Nope. Thanks for having me and filling me in on the the new product.
Thank you all very much. Like I said, go to the website. You can get all the descriptions of the malt gems. And this is just one of those things that we get to have fun as homebrewers. And till next time, see you in 2 weeks.